How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. We're actually going to react to another video, and it's an Asmogold video. Well, it's because of this. Unreal Engine 5 is killing games. Yeah, let's just look at it. By the way, both videos will be in the description down below if you want to watch the full thing.
Specifically.
Okay, looks like we have reached the actual Unreal part. I had to cut a lot of the video because it was just a lot of rambling about anti-aliasing, which, yeah, anti-aliasing, it's a huge cost in performance, but it's something that you got to do. I don't understand why this person has a problem with that, because there's only so much you can do with the hardware you get, especially in games that need to be shipped on consoles. So anti-aliasing is trying to compensate for that. Should games be better optimized? Well, there's only so much you can do until your graphical fidelity goes down. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I do agree that graphical fidelity increasing doesn't really improve the game. For me, gameplay has to be first in visuals, but that's another point entirely. I don't know why he is so against certain anti-aliasing options, because they're there because that's what we need to use to develop a game and to ship a game that looks good and performs decently well. But let's look at why Unreal is apparently killing games.
Another out of context narrative Epic Games is pushing is that Nanite
has a faster way to render geometry and aims to eliminate the LOD pop-in association. Nanite does not increase performance unless you abuse your scene with extreme overdraw. I've compiled many tests on the specific Unreal forums thread that proves this. Nanite can cost as much as next-gen lighting, and pop-in will still remain a part of your gaming experience because shadows, skeletal meshes, foliage, and open world partitions will still introduce pop.
And we know this from PAX Day, because PAX Day had that same.
Well, that's not an engine problem. That's a developer problem. See, a lot of people, myself included, when Nanite came out, thought that this was this godsend thing that will allow us to use the highest polymesh possible all the freaking time and nothing bad will happen. Well, it turns out that there are graphical problems because Nanite can only work so fast. It's just trying to like reduce the polygon count in real time. So I think it's amazing. It's a great thing that we have that in Unreal, but it does have its drawbacks. You still have to optimize. You cannot use high poly meshes for everything.
Functionality.
Even Brian Karras has stated Nanite can have worse performance on optimized meshes, but stated users still enable it to save disk space. This is a perfect example showing Epic Games' flaw.
One thing about Nanite that I know most people that use Unreal probably know, but one issue with Nanite is when you do have optimized, what he calls optimized geometry. So when you have too low of a geometry and you apply Nanite to it, you get artifacts. That has happened to me with certain models that I had from the marketplace that are a little bit lower, like they're from 4.27. They tend to get a little bit broken if I nanite those meshes. So there's that.
Flawed position on what modern games really need.
It doesn't matter if your highly detailed open world game is 100 megabytes, but can't perform at a decent resolution and frame rate.
Yeah.
Optimized meshes don't even require nanite compression. But studios who use Nanite save themselves money by not investing in quality LODs.
And not investing in mesh introduction transitional effects that would give you better results. A good practice used on optimized game meshes is the use of bitmaps for subpixel detail.
Yeah, look at that.
A good practice.
You guys see this? Watch, it just literally appears out of nowhere.
A good practice used on optimized game meshes is the use of bitmaps for subpixel detail, such as the words on these quixel stones. Nanite encourages and is designed to render subpixel detail geometrically instead of textures, which causes extreme pixel crawl and artifacting, which you guessed it, can only be fixed by intense temporal frame smearing, creating a manufactured and limited scenario where flawed TAA appears as...
Yeah, this is true. That's why you don't use Nanite for everything. Again, this is the problem that I'm seeing is more of something of a developer problem, not an engine problem. The fact that an engine has a tool doesn't mean that that tool is going to solve absolutely everything. It's going to make everything better. There's still developer input, and you still have to take into account which method should be better. Sometimes baked lighting is better than lumen. Sometimes having trim sheets is better than using nanite all over.
The better option. I understand the time and quality issues related to making good LEDs, but nanite is the worst solution to this problem.
UE5 will dominate all other options because this engine excels in support.
I'm talking asset packages formatted specifically for Unreal, hundreds of documentations, shared public content, overwhelming logic support. Epic Games provides hundreds of free, basic, but high-quality assets when you use Unreal.
Holy
Every
shit.
major third-party vendor with game-related software.
Well, here's the thing. Most AAA studios are not using any of those tools. They have their own in-house tools. They have their own in-house libraries of assets. They may use Megascans, because I've started seeing Megascans a lot in video games, but most of the things that are in the marketplace are not used by AAA studios. They're mostly used by indies like myself.
Software always prioritizes support for Unreal.
I hate video games
Unreal
now.
offers a unique amount of support for critical tools for basic workflows like animation and debuggers. It's intuitive to use in comparison with competitor UI and programming designs. For studios, finding individuals to hire is made easy due to the widespread popularity and adoption of the engine. It's an advantage Unreal has acquired by simply existing as long as it has the way it has. That makes it the go-to for software and digital media. But the engine designs and its leadership should not be at the forefront of next-gen graphics development for critical reasons I'll outline right now. Epic provides 30 FPS presets in Unreal because they don't believe it's inadequate on 9th generation consoles. Look at Fortnite 5.4's performance. The design is CPU intensive, sure, but the art style is simplistic enough to even with GI it should provide a computational advantage. Yet it's one of the hardest games to run on the GPU side even with a 60 FPS or high preset enabled.
Oh my god.
This is the best performance offered by the engine's creators. Of course it'll defend 30 FPS when basic realism or complex stylized visuals come into play.
Okay, this part I didn't know. I don't play Fortnite. I don't make maps for Fortnite, so that part came as a real surprise.
Epic has no experience making realistic games.
That's actually true.
Matrix Awakens is not a game. It's a visually exciting 30 FPS demo with enough motion blur to hide the 30 FPS screen judder. Consumers who didn't own a 9th generation console at the time.
So he's saying that, like, we thought we were living in a 60 FPS world, but we were in a 30 FPS world all along, and we did.
Yeah, because consoles are underpowered. There's only so much you can do.
Didn't even know it? This is good. Bro, I'm going to be thinking about this for a while.
Saw the 60 FPS tag on the YouTube presentation and assumed that was the case. People who did experience the demo firsthand were given basic interaction through a locked aiming system that wouldn't expose the fluidity.
This is true. I even played the demo. My computer's super slow. It is just a showcase. That's what it is. Just like the one that we got before when Nanite was introduced, the one with that female character doing the magic and all stuff. That was just a showcase. That was never meant to be a video game. And just with the Matrix, I didn't expect for games to look that way. That was just more of a marketing thing than an actual, this is how games are going to be in the future, which going more and more and more realistic, it's not a good thing.
Issues of 30 FPS. Epic has no problem abusing the flaws of their TAA or temporal upscalers such as DLSS for several effects I've shown throughout this video. Epic defaults their engine to rely on temporal smearing when very few TAA independent features remain undocumented and hidden behind loopholes most unsuspecting developers will never find.
I had no idea about any of
promote
this.
Heavy and blurry temporal upscaling as a viable solution on 9th generation consoles. And the biggest problem with Epic and their perspective on game development is that Fortnite drives their motivations for Unreal's development.
Of course.
Fortnite is a game with a very unique and uncommon problem the engine has to accommodate for. It's an open world map with a dynamic time of day and weather. This means real-time GPU calculations need to be computed per frame to account for those dynamic changes. What makes these calculations so much more expensive in Unreal is the fact that Fortnite's entire environment is destructible. This is why more realistic open worlds from 8th generation console titles have no problem with day or weather cycles even though they don't use light maps. use light maps.
Holy shit.
Because their environment, or in other words, primary source of indirect lighting, is mostly static. These games use lighting solutions that bait small, memory-efficient indirect lighting hints that your GPU doesn't have to compute. This way, your GPU just calculates how these pre-computed hints correlate to the dynamic lights and shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah, backlighting. We've been using backlighting for a while, and I think in video games, at least, we'll still be using backlighting because that's just the best that we can do for optimization.
These lighting systems have their own limitations, but not a whole lot that can't be accelerated or overcome using 9th Gen's hardware.
And like, here's a good example of this. Have you guys ever walked inside of a room in Unreal and the room is super dark, and then in like a minute it becomes bright?
Yeah, that's the auto exposure. I hate it, and I always disable it in my projects.
I wonder if that's related to this.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Potential.
What he means, like, if you're not an Unreal user, there is this thing where the game or the engine does auto exposure, which I always disable. It's better to do exposure, camera-based exposure. And again, this is another thing that it's a developer thing. It's not an engine thing. You can deactivate it and use your own camera exposure. But when it's not camera dependent and you go into a room and then you go out, then you're going to get blinded. And then if you go into the room, then everything is really dark, just like Asmo is saying. This, again, some people call it a feature.
Fortnite's GI, which is Unreal's Lumen, can't let developers with the common environmental properties bake any high-quality indirect lighting hints that save you performance. Unreal's light maps are uninterpolatable and have serious leaking problems that can only be mitigated with stupid amounts of VRAM memory. So many Unreal games are wasting performance for basic visual standards because your GPU is computer whether or not a Fortnite wall has been destroyed or what that wall looks like, etc. Lumen is noisy without TAA because it isn't designed to use stable or high-quality indirect lighting hints. So top that inefficiency off in games with other Epic game technology.
He's not wrong. What I mean is, the fact that Lumen is in there, unless Epic is forcing these studios, because I think Immortals of Avium was backed by Unreal. I know Hellblade always is. Maybe they told them you have to use this, but otherwise, I don't see a reason why any developer using Unreal Engine has to be forced to use Lumen. You can still use bake lighting. Actually, baking light, it's pretty good right now. It's pretty easy to do. It's much faster than it was in Unreal Engine 4. You can still use it.
Like Nanite, Virtual Shadow Maps, and TSR, and we're left with games created faster than ever and as inefficient and as terrible in motion as ever. When this happens over and over again, it standardizes, which is why other studios are following these inefficient designs for their mostly static games that could use faster systems.
And so I think that I don't know what to say. Like, I think that the problem is that it creates. I think what he's trying to argue, I'm not sure because I don't really have like a background in this. I think what he's trying to argue is that the end result of this type of cost cutting is a worse product, even though for a lot of average users, they probably don't care.
Epic Games' indifference towards underperforming
He's saying devs are lazy? Yeah.
Third-party Unreal games,
I think,
is the statement that big budget studios should be customizing Unreal source code to provide more appropriate designs for their titles. True, but it's almost a catch-22. If a studio decides to use Unreal, it shows they lack the funding, interest, and/or innovation to manage the graphics themselves. This is exactly what happens.
I don't know who says this. Unreal Engine it's there. It's just to make, like, game developers studios have always used other engines. Like, a lot of people were using the CryEngine back in the day. Some other studios use Frostbite. The game studio having its own in-house engine doesn't mean that they are better. Like, look at Starfield. Look at how Starfield looks, because they're still using the creation engine, which is probably a spaghetti of code that it's just you can't fix it anymore. So I don't understand this argument.
when established studios throw out proprietary engines in favor of what Unreal offers.
Wait, what?
I have one more problem with Epic that I need to cover.
What?
Unreal is used for the automotive, film, simulation, and construction industries. That wouldn't be a problem if Epic wasn't constantly accounting for this user base and modeling Unreal with algorithms not meant for consumer-efficient real-time rendering.
That's
Amidst
true.
of these issues, I gave Epic the benefit of the doubt and made a feedback thread on the Unreal Developer Forums 12 months ago, requesting the prioritization of game development and a larger focus on temporal smearing independence within their various effects. In only 11 months, it was voted as the #1 feedback from developers, replacing the previous #1 feedback thread made 3 years ago. Epic released several Unreal versions, including nothing pertaining to the thread's request, despite a solid number of educated developers ready to progress beyond Epic's limited vision for this generation of gaming.
Jesus.
This studio was created to begin the production of an intense
people use Unreal for all kinds of things. Like for architecture renderings and all kinds of other things too. Yeah, he rallied the devs. Yeah, this is insane.
Based on a new IP consisting over 700 pages of detailed story and scenarios.
Yeah, and I have a YouTube channel that shows you how to use Unreal in many, many other ways aside from game developers, so subscribe.
Our game is conventional due to only requiring a mostly static world with dynamic lights, making our goals much more relevant to many developers and gamers.
Yeah.
We have paused the production of our game, so our unrivaled passion for motion clarity and performance standards for untainted photorealism can be met, which is why our solution is to create a custom Unreal via crowdfunding, with custom systems that directly address the giant issues stated in this video. Don't think a custom Unreal engine will have an impact on developers? Take the finals for example. It performs so much better than other UE5 games. People defend Epic's UE5 and solely blame studios for any worse performing titles.
Yeah.
But the finals extreme.
Yes. The reason why people blame studios and not Unreal is because you are blaming the hammer for your nail not being placed correctly. If Unreal's not the way to go, then there's Unity, there's Godot. I'm sorry. A lot of people say I'm too biased to Unreal because I work with it, but when it comes to games, like, you have choice. There's a lot of choice. I think he's arguing that Unreal may be monopolizing the market by all these big studios moving to Unreal, but that's not the fault of Epic. That's the fault of the studio that decides to go with it.
Destructive nature made using Nanite and the associated virtual shadow maps impossible. And most people don't know that the finals uses NVIDIA's custom UE5 branch to make use of its lower quality but much faster dynamic GI, DDGI, instead of Epic's Lumen. The finals performance doesn't contradict our views on Epic's Unreal. It only proves our point.
I haven't played that game, so I have no idea what he's talking about.
NVIDIA's custom UE5 branch is exactly how we want to execute ours. But as of now, we need...
Alright, so sorry I had to cut some parts of the videos that were not related to Unreal. The creator of the video that Asmo is reacting to, he's arguing that Unreal has a problem that is infecting the industry because of what it has, because of Lumen, because of Nanite. You don't have to use those. I do agree when he says that there is a big problem in the industry that we're moving towards more graphics, more graphics, more graphics. Every AAA game is more open and has to have more fidelity. I think this has damaged the industry a lot because it should be gameplay over graphics. That's why lately some indie games have been doing better than some AAA games, because video games should not be about visuals. Video games should be about the game mechanics. I would say you can have fantastic visuals, fantastic story, but if your game mechanics suck, nobody's gonna buy your game. If you have fantastic game mechanics, but your story is terrible and your graphics are horrible, a lot of people are gonna buy your game because the mechanics are fun. That's just what it is. The whole video it was a kind of like an essay about the utilization of certain anti-aliasing in the industry, and the problem with that, it's not. I don't think it has to do with Unreal at all. It's more related to, yeah, the graphics that they're pushing, but pushing higher fidelity is not an engine issue. It's a studio issue. It's whatever the higher-ups decide the game would be. The higher-ups can decide, hey, let's, do a little bit lesser fidelity. Let's do more stylized. Stylized games usually require a lot less hard work. And most of what he says I don't think the average gamer even notice it. I do notice that games with time have become blurrier, and yeah, it has to do with anti-aliasing. But what are you gonna do? Are you gonna release the game with a lot of jagged edges? There's only so much optimization that you can do with the game, but you don't have to use nanite. The fact that we have nanite and the fact that some developers are using nanite is on the developer. You don't have to use nanite. There's an option not to use nanite. Actually, most meshes do not come with nanite enabled. You have to enable it yourself. You can also choose to bake lighting. There's a lot of people on Twitter that I follow that still do fantastic environments with bake lighting. You don't have to use Lumen GI for everything. I myself, for my day job, because I don't work in video games anymore, but I do use Unreal a lot, I use path tracing. You cannot use path tracing for a video game. There is this thing that's NVIDIA is doing that's called real-time path tracing. That just will cause so much problems with performance-wise. I would never add that to a game. If you ask me, like, real-time ray tracing for a video game is unnecessary, because unless you are playing that game to take photos, there's a lot of people who just play games to take photos and post it online. Unless you're that kind of player, like, real-time ray tracing does absolutely nothing. It just adds a couple highlights. It just had better reflections. That does not add anything to the gameplay other than cost performance and, reduce frames. I thought this video was going to be a little bit different. It wasn't as focused in Unreal as it was on anti-aliasing. And I'm not making fun of Asmo. I know he's not a game developer. I like to follow him. A lot of people ask me, why do I follow Asmogold? Like, his hygiene is terrible. His house is horrible. He has roaches all around. I follow him because of his game insights, not because of his housekeeping tutorials. So I think sometimes he has great ideas. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. Remember, more often than not, you don't blame the hammer. Games not being optimized, it's not because of Unreal. It's because of the developer, because they want to save money. But that has nothing to do with the engine. That has to do with the studio. If you're new to the channel, I do a lot of Unreal Engine tutorials. And if you want to learn about the engine, you can subscribe down below. I have plenty of tutorials. You'll understand how it works, whether it's for games, for cinematics, commercials, anything that you want to use the engine for. If you disagree with me, by all means, just keep it civil. I like to, talk with people on the comment sections. And I'll see you in the next one.